What's up, pod pals? Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Your Podcast. If you're looking for podcasting tips around how to launch your podcast, how to grow your podcast, how to monetize your podcast, anything and all things podcasting, you're in the right place. Let's talk about your podcast. And today we're talking to one of my new pod pals, Kate Volman from the Create for No Reason podcast. We're going to dive into her podcasting journey about why she decided to launch a show, what's gone well, what hasn't gone so well, and some tips for all the newbie podcasters out there. Kate, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, so good. I'm so happy to be here, Adam. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, similar story from the last few episodes. I met you on Clubhouse and we start to network, we start to create content together. I'm like, you got to come on the show. You host great rooms. So I'd like to start with the story of what made you initially decide to launch a podcast. So, Create for no reason, the creation story.
Well, it actually goes well before Create for No Reason, because I started a podcast in 2008, something crazy, like all the way back, like before podcasting was everywhere and everyone had a podcast. And honestly, Adam, I look back and think, oh my gosh, if I would have just kept going with my podcast, what would have happened? Like, what would it have turned into? And so part of me wanting to start this podcast is because I loved podcasting, but I think when it comes to creation and content creation, it's consistency. We have to be super consistent. And so I was like, I can't wait any longer to have another podcast. So, because I talked myself out of it, right? Because it's easy to talk ourselves out of doing the work that we really want to do. Because now I'm like, well, I did it back in 2008. I should have kept going, but I didn't. I could have either decided to never do it again or to do another show. And so I actually created another podcast called Trajectory, which I did with my friend Kyle. We did that for probably about a year and a half. And then I decided, hey, I want to do this other podcast that is really around the creation process and how important it is for us to give an outlet for our creativity. Just for the fun of it, just to share the work that you want to share, just to say what you want to say and do the work that you feel like you're meant to do and you're called to do, and to not put so much pressure on yourself around we have to monetize it, right? You guys talk about podcasting and monetizing. Like, I think so many people, we think, oh, if I'm going to start a blog or a podcast or YouTube videos or whatever it is, we have this super long game idea of it has to be my business. It has to be what I do for a living, when really all this stuff starts out as just, I want to create something. I want to put these ideas out into the world. And so my friend Sean, who used to work for GoDaddy, he and I talk about the creation process and just really the practice of it all, the getting in the reps, the doing the work, the showing up every day and putting in the work. And so we came up with this idea of doing this podcast and kind of played around with different titles. And we were chatting. I'm like, create for no reason. People just need to create for no reason, just for the fun of it, and just to explore what could potentially come out of it. And what's so beautiful is that sometimes it turns into a podcast that turns into a business and your life. And sometimes it doesn't. It really just gives an opportunity to meet cool people, be a part of a community. And maybe the podcast turns into YouTube or a business or clients or other things that you never would have thought of and you never would have been exposed to had you not gotten started. So that's really kind of some of the behind the scenes of my podcasting journey.
Well, I think it's important to realize that. I love that, like, people like you are in this space and we're having this conversation, because I definitely am one of those people that I'm always like, what is the monetization aspect? How are we not going into the hole every month? Like, we got to have the business game plan and this and that. But at the root of all that, it's what you said. Like, we have something to say and we would love to feel like it's being heard out there. That's the essence of every podcast. It should be. And you have to sometimes be good with that. Like, it's a creative outlet. And like, I know that how great it feels to feel heard. That's why I've been really loving Clubhouse. I was talking to somebody else about this. I go, man, I could post on Facebook all day. And my mom and my grandma Dolores, shout out Grandma Dolores, to get ready to turn 90, like they'll comment, but no one else sees it. I go on Clubhouse and I feel heard, and people are interacting and like we're following back. We're creating content together. I'm like, this is nice. So I think that if anybody out there is listening in or watching the video, if you have that like nagging, burning sensation of I'm interested in a topic, I feel like I can make an impact, I think I have interesting things to say, that's good enough. Like you can launch a show just out of that. Would you agree with that, Kate?
Oh my gosh, yes, so much so. And it's not bad that we want to monetize, right? Like it's not bad if you want to have a business and you want the podcast to at some point be what you do for a living. That's an awesome dream and a goal to have. But what I think is interesting is that so many, I mean, even look at Clubhouse and all the rooms. So many of the rooms are around how do you monetize? How do you make money? How do you do all these things? Instead of how do you create better content? How do you create a show that's worth listening to, that's worth watching? How do you go deeper into the topics that you love and the things that you want to share so that it really does resonate with more people when they actually do find the podcast? And so I find that's what I love talking about. I love talking about how do people come up with these ideas and then watching them go through the process of discovering how to say things in ways that other people haven't, so that people are attracted to them. They're attracted to that message, because I do believe we all have a message to share, but it's how you choose to share it that's going to draw those right people to you. And that work takes time. It takes energy and effort and practice to do it every single day, to show up every day, to get on the microphone. I mean, Adam, if you look at your very first podcast, I'm sure you'd cringe if you listen to it, right?
I've told this story on my show, but I'll tell it again quickly. My first like 5 or 6 episodes, I listened to podcasts. I'm like, there are sound effects. That's a podcast thing. But I didn't understand audio levels, like noise levels. So I put it was a health show, and I found this sound effect that I thought it sounded like a barbell hitting the ground, like you're at the gym, like clang, 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 clang. I'm like, oh, that's a great way to end. Like I just slammed down the barbell. So I snuck it in at the end. And I finally got an email from somebody that goes, I almost wrecked my car. Please take the shotgun sound out. That's like 10 times louder than everything else. So it's like me going at this level, ending the show. Then all of a sudden at the end, and people were like almost dying listening to my show because it scared them.
Oh my god.
It was like so loud. So yeah, I started ugly to put it in a nutshell.
You start that is crazy, by the way. But thank goodness that person reached out to you, because
I'd still be doing it. Be like 600 episodes.
Does Adam not realize that he's causing all these accidents in the world?
The Fatality Podcast.
Oh my gosh, but that's what's so great is you put in the work, you put it out there, you get the feedback, and then you know what's good, and you know what it takes to get better. And I do the show with my friend Sean, and every week we record every week, and if we miss a week or two, when we get back on the mic, I notice because we missed that week. We missed the rep. And I think that's something to be said about the creative process in anything, right? We could be talking about creating YouTube videos or writing blogs or writing a book or whatever it is. Sitting down and doing that work, we can't miss that, because you getting in the reps, you're getting better each time you do it, each time you sit down, each time you share your message, each time you explain something. And that's what I find so beautiful about the creation process and about podcasting, is that if you really want to create a podcast that's meaningful, and you really want to create content that's meaningful, you're thoughtful around how can I get better each time, around looking at it, around hearing feedback. Sometimes we get feedback. I just got feedback. Actually, I just got feedback even on our hiring process. I run a coaching company, and getting feedback, sometimes we can get feedback and think, oh, whatever, they don't know what they're talking about. Or we can get feedback from someone and say, hey, there actually are useful. It's useful. It might be nasty feedback, but sometimes even the nasty feedback, we can find value in it, and we don't need to let it paralyze us and not do anything and not, continue on forward with what we're doing. But we can take that feedback and make it better. So it's just that constant phase of perfecting and getting better. And that's what I love so much about podcasting is like, how can we make it better, resonate with more people, and just know that if we keep doing it, the right people are going to find us, right? Like that community will come. And that's the hard part. I don't know about you, Adam, but I do feel like the hard part is the consistency, especially when you're not getting thousands or millions of subscribers, if that's really what you want.
Well, I think what you said there is really important because it's like working out. Like you've mentioned getting in the reps. And like if you work out every once in a while, you might get some results. But if you work out consistently, you're transformed. And when I've done over 600 episodes between my 3 shows. So I've had 600 conversations, solo episodes, coaching episodes, panels. And each time I put in a rep like that, I come out a little bit better. I'm a better communicator.
Mm-hmm.
That spills over into my home life, into my relationships. I'm a better listener. Like I think it's almost annoying for my family members because they feel like they're being interviewed at this point. Like, but I'll just sit back and listen. I let them talk because I know that that's really important for people to be heard. And then I try to add my, but it's really interesting how this has spilled into other areas of my life and improved it. So even if you never get a sponsor, you never sell a thing, you never get to, shill out mattresses or men's underwear or anything on your show, like you still made a difference because you're perfecting and crafting the art of communication. And that's worth something. So maybe I always challenge people. I'm like, don't quit until you do 52 episodes or a year's worth of content. Go for a year. You'll come out the other side better no matter what. So that's kind of my take on it.
I love that. I love that challenge too. You have to give yourself that goal, that outcome, because it really is easy to stop. It also challenges you to discover, do you want to create a podcast for ego or do you really have something to say? Because if you really have something to say, you'll keep saying it. You'll keep showing up and putting in the work will be fun. If you are doing it for ego or just to make money or other reasons, it's easy to stop because it's not, it's not providing anything to you. But I think those people that I see that even they still have a small following, or maybe it's not caught on, but they're still at it. They're at 100 episodes. They're at 200 episodes. It's like that person believes in what they have to say. And that's what's really inspiring. And I love that you shared that it spills into other areas of your life, because that if you have a dream, if you have a desire, if you have a passion, any kind of passion project or work that you really want to do, if you've thought about it for a while, I mean, look, I started my podcast in 2008 and I still like the idea of podcasting. So it's like, obviously it's not going away, right? Like it's there. So I need to make that decision to do that thing. And when we pursue those things in our heart that don't go away, because it's there for a reason, it's your dream for a reason. And when we decide to finally pursue those things, that's what happens. It does spill into other areas of our life. We're more passionate. We become more engaged in our life, in our work, in everything that we do. And that's what's so wonderful about this concept of create for no reason, because it truly is just giving yourself permission to start the podcast, take the dance class, do the cooking class, play the cello, whatever you've been thinking about doing, and you just keep making excuses to not do. All of that is going to spark your creativity, and everyone is creative. I don't care what you say. Everyone that says I'm not creative, you are creative in your own unique way, and it comes through in your dreams and your passion projects.
I agree wholeheartedly. And so you've mentioned, serving the right audience and impacting the audience. We've been talking about that a little bit. I'd love to know like who your right audience is. Because I know that, podcasters with a lot of experience like yourself, you tend to get to know those people. and people that are newer listening in, this is something that usually need to perfect. So how did you figure out who your right people are, and how do you try to like really make sure you're serving that exact right audience?
I love this question, Adam, because Sean and I are always talking about it. And I think we're always trying to perfect it as we go. I think we are. So last week, I was saying to him, I want to have that, this is who we're for, but not make it generic. I want it to be something so specific, like someone, when you say to someone, they say, yes, that's me, or no, that's not me. So that was kind of a challenge that I gave to us. And so we came up with, our show is, and this isn't perfect yet, but because we could go into the whole avatar, but we're playing around with, our show is for creative procrastinators. And see, Adam, like, are you a creative procrastinator?
Me personally, I guess we all have a little bit of that in us, right? Like there's always that, like me, I'm a big checklist guy. And I notice that some of those, like those mid-ranking checklists, if I've got my top 10 list, they kind of stay in there and I start moving stuff around. So yeah, I would say yes. Long answer short.
So, and if it was no, that was totally fine too. But like when you say creative procrastinator, it's something that people are either like, I identify as that or I don't.
Yeah.
And so many of our audience, we have a small audience still, we have a Facebook group. We just started our Facebook group, and so when we put stuff in there, I posted that in the group. And so we get feedback from them to help us determine and use the language that we're using to promote the podcast. And so that was really helpful. I think so many of our audience are creative procrastinators. It's like we have these things that we really want to do and we are excited about it. We're very passionate about it and we're just not really doing it. So a lot of the shows that we do are around things like the process and the practice and challenging yourself to do the work and get in the reps. And we talk about imposter syndrome, and we talk a lot about, the writing process or the creating process and what that looks like. And so it is for those people that are trying to create something, whatever that looks like. We have photographers that listen, and lots of entrepreneurs that have side hustles. This is totally for them because they're trying to create content. They're doing Instagram and YouTube and trying to figure out podcasting in different mediums. And so that's really what the show is about. And that's who it's for. But man, Adam, I feel like it's hard to really hone in on that niche to get that audience, to identify that audience. So we're playing around with it all the time.
Well, we're newer friends, we're newer pod pals, but once we get to know each other better, that I'm like, I just had a podgasm. Like I had an idea explosion. And we've got a question popping out of the audience. Philip, we'll get to you here in a second. Just giving you a heads up there. So anytime you deal with procrastination, I feel like you can increase engagement, level up your content, and even monetize with the solution, which is implementation. So like I'm a big fan of coaching style episodes. I would love for you to create like an implementation audit of, okay, you've been procrastinating on this. Here is our audit process. We're going to pull you out of the audience and I'm going to do an interview, a live coaching session with you for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And you take them through your process to get them into action. You get them to implement. Like your audience is going to freaking love that. It creates a super fan. And as I like to say, it kind of lubricates the potential monetization pathway where like now you just added to them in a big way. So when you have a program, product, service, or anything, or even if they can just like, if you've got a Patreon that they can contribute to, they're all about that. Like they're going to support you however they can. So I think that would be really cool content, some sort of a procrastination or implementation audit, like go from procrastination to implementation in 30 minutes with Kate. And I think that would be pretty good stuff. Any thoughts on that?
Okay, so I'm taking notes. I'm getting a coaching session here. And what's really funny, Adam? So before we hopped on this, I was telling Adam that I enjoy his emails, and I saw your email about doing the coaching session. So guess what? I read your email on the coaching, and I'm like, I know that. That is a great idea. How come? Like I know people do that. I love when people do that. And so I messaged Sean. I said, I want to, oh no, before I even messaged him, I put in our Facebook group, hey, I want to do a coaching session. Who's in to do a coaching session live on our podcast? So I love that. And I love that procrastination to implementation, 20-minute call. Love it. That's a great idea. And I am taking it. So
Good.
thanks for the coaching session.
Well, I'm an idea factory. So like the naming is key. What I found when I consult with people that do this, don't call it a hot seat. Don't even call it just a coaching session.
Yeah.
Like, give it a theme. So when I do my 30-minute podcast audits for podcast monetization, audience engagement, and download growth, like people know what they're getting into. And I go through and they come on my show and we go through the key points and they walk out of that with action steps. And they're like, I can do this. So you help them level up their hope. But having a specific name and kind of more of a pinpoint theme, that really helps. But definitely use it to pull people out of the audience, to get eyeball to eyeball and connect. You're creating super fans, audience engagement really levels up. And the questions that they have represent your ideal audience and your ideal listener avatar. There'll be dozens of people that are listening and going, I've got that same problem. I've got that same question. And then they hear you solve it. So now you're top of mind in that expert status of like, okay, when they're ready to get the credit card out, when you have a thing to offer, that makes that process, like I said, kind of lubricates that whole process.
I love it. I love that you really clarified calling it something differently, because I do think calling it a coaching session, it scares people.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yep.
But saying procrastination to implementation, that's like, oh yeah, I need that. I need that. I don't need coaching. I need that.
Yeah. Like I could totally see, like, if you've had a great idea and it's been sitting on the shelf collecting dust for weeks or months, you know, this is the solution and it's free. Get on the calendar. Boom, go, run, don't walk. All right, we got a question I'm going to pull up from the audience here from my main man, Philip. Philip says, for Kate, what is the best thing to do if you have something to say but don't know where to get started? What advice would you add for my friend Philip here?
Oh, I love that. So I think that is such a great question, because it's something that most people deal with. We overcomplicate, right? Like we think, oh, I have something to say, but now I have to start a podcast. Oh, and now I have to get a microphone and a camera and do this whole thing that Adam's like. We look at Adam and we say, oh, I need to do all of this. It needs to be streamed live. And no, like this is awesome. And Adam just shared, I mean, has 600 episodes. I mean, that's a lot of episodes. So when I think about starting, I always think, what's the next right step? What's the simplest thing that I can do to share this message? So you have this message. What is the absolute simplest thing? So Philip, my question back to you would be, what is the simplest thing you can do? Do you have Instagram? Could you decide, hey, I'm going to go live on Instagram right now and share this message? Can I post it on my Facebook page? Can I just get out the microphone and do an audio, not even do a whole podcast, and just share an audio version of me talking? Like, for you, what is the simplest thing that you can do? One of those things or something else. Maybe you want to write a blog post. You're going to say, hey, for the next 30 days, I'm going to write a blog and it's going to be 100 words, like a very simple, short way to share my message. So whatever that looks like to you. So the simplest thing, we have to always take ourselves back to simplicity. When we look at what other people are creating, sometimes what I think our challenge is, we look at someone that has millions of subscribers, right? We think when someone says podcasting, who do you think of? You know, a lot of people think Joe Rogan, right? And like now all these things are happening with like Dax Shepard and like, so we think that's the goal. When really, look at someone who's just a few steps above you, right? So like for me, like I'm still fairly new at podcasting. We still have a small audience. So like for some people, they really resonate with me way more than they're going to resonate with somebody else who's been doing this for 20 years and they have millions of followers. So and that's just kind of how our brain works. But like, think about what is the simplest thing you can do, the next right step. And once you do that, That's awesome. Now you do the next thing and then the next thing. And because you shared that Instagram video or that blog or whatever you decided to do, you're going to say next time, oh, well, now I'm going to do this. Well, now I'm going to take this and make it an image. And you're going to start to see that your creativity will start to show up, but only because you took that first step. Taking the first step is what opens up the floodgates to all these other opportunities and all these other ideas. That's all it takes. Just make it as simple as that, and you'll start to see what shows up.
Yes. I love the Instagram tip, because a lot of people are like, well, do I need to launch a YouTube channel? Do I need to launch a podcast? Maybe you test the waters. You dip your toe in the water, and you, like Kate said, go live on Instagram once a week. Maybe commit to a day of the week and go, I'm going to create for no reason. It's the Create for No Reason challenge. And I want you to do that for like 4 weeks. Maybe it's Monday night at 7 p.m. and just get in some reps and put content out there. My other little bit of advice would be, if you think maybe down the road you want to start a podcast, you want to start a blog, you want to start a YouTube channel, a lot of people, like, we know what we're excited about, but flip it around and go, who could I potentially impact with this? And how could I impact them? And if I was able to successfully deliver my knowledge to them, what type of impact would that make? That'll get you fired up. But it goes from, creating content for no reason, but all of a sudden then you've got this other face at the other end, that avatar. And you're like, that's who I'm serving. You're not serving yourself with this. Like, you'll get benefits, but really, if you build it for that person you're trying to impact, you're going to serve the hell out of that audience, and you're going to grow a lot faster. And then you are in turn served back, positively back in your direction. So that'd be my 2 cents there. And Philip's still with us here. Thanks for the advice, Kate. Biggest issue, self-diagnosed. Although Adam will probably agree. I know Philip. He's one of my old school buddies. That I've always had a bit of a lazy streak. I'll start with some small steps, just to get something accomplished. You're still the man, Mr. Shaba. Thank you, PH. I appreciate you, man. And let's get some content out there, Philip. That's exciting, man. Okay.
Also, I'm just going to share with Philip. That's a story. That's a story that you're telling yourself that you're lazy. That is a story, and you can flip that around and not be that way, right? Starting today, right? Like, who do you need to be to create the content that you want? Like, that's what I always think about, right? Like, what does that look like? What is the kind of person that I want to be? What would they do? And they would do the thing. They would set the goal to do like Adam just said, the live video once a week on Instagram, and they would actually do it. So we tell ourselves a lot of stories, right? Like, even like being a procrastinator, right? Like, we don't have to be. We know when we're not doing the thing that we want to do. We know when we're making excuses. We know when we're not pursuing the dreams that we want to, but we just let ourselves off the hook. But when we think about, I love that you shared, you think about the person that you're serving and helping, and also think about the person that you get to become. What's on the other side of creating all that content? What's on the other side of pursuing the dreams that you want to pursue? That's the person that you're meant to be. That's the person that you get to become, that you won't unless you go through all the process that it takes to get there. So get rid of that story. You're not lazy, Philip.
Beautifully said. And I always look at it, if you've got a big goal, look at it like you've got a bunch of dominoes lined up between where you are and where you want to be. And you don't have to knock them all over at once. You just have to flick the first one over to create the momentum. And that's what Kate's saying. Like, what's that next thing? What's that first thing? Maybe it's read a book. Maybe it's listen to a few episodes of one of the shows where we talk about launching your podcast, or you go onto a YouTube channel and search how to launch a YouTube channel, and you just kind of start to consume information. But what's the first domino? You don't have to worry about all the dominoes. So that's kind of a mantra that I'm always thinking about. That I love the book, The One Thing by Jay Papasan and Gary Keller, where they talk about, like, what is the one thing that if you accomplish it, it will impact your life in the biggest, broadest sense. So think about that one thing. I want to talk about the stuff that hasn't gone well. Like, that's an important part of the journey, or maybe some unexpected road bumps along your way. You've done multiple shows, so I'm sure there's a few things in there that made you shift gears from one to the other. But what's something, like, I love stories. We talked about my story of messing up the audio. We got to show these newer podcasts, podcast entrepreneurs, people that are launching shows, that we're not perfect, that we mess stuff up. So give me a good story about something that got an interview that you thought you were recording and you realized you didn't, or audio mess ups, or give me one of those stories, Kate.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So definitely things don't always go the way that you planned. I know for us, there have been a couple times that, and this irks me so much because, as podcasters, you got to have a microphone. It needs to sound good. It's got to be perfect. So we did this episode and it was so good. And I got off of it and I was like, that was the best episode. I felt like we found our stride and everything was so great. And it was awesome. And it killed me when I listened to it because my microphone was off. It was I'm here. It's it wasn't plugged in, Adam. It was not plugged in. And it made me so sad. And of course I couldn't get over it because I'm like, but it was so good. And now I don't even want to share it. I don't even want to tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
Which was ridiculous.
Yeah, I've done that before too. And it's a serious bummer when you hear that echoey sound. I'm like, wait a second, what happened? The mic. And now I switched over to StreamYard, and every once in a while it'll default as my computer audio. So I always have to check. I realize if my wrong camera is on, if it's the computer camera versus my Logitech, but with the audio, I got to double check that deal, because coming through the in my podcast bunker here, I got cement floors and all this stuff. So the mic makes a huge, huge difference. But yeah, that's the audio deal. And you put so much into it, and you already have your heart set on that being the greatest episode ever.
Yes. And it was so devastating. Oh, and not to mention, so my microphone was off. My co-host was on. So he sounded fabulous. And I was like, wait, how did you think this sounded good? You didn't notice? I'm like, this is horrible. So now I yelled at him. So he now every time he's like, is your mic, is it on? Is your mic on?
He should hit the old comment box going, hey, Kate, something's weird on the audio here.
I know.
Like you're 10 feet away.
Not notice. I was so upset. I mean, I tease. We're very good friends, but it was so funny. I was like, oh, never let me do that again. Yeah, no good. No good.
I did an interview with, it was just a weird circumstance because this guy was an audio quality expert guy and a speaking expert guy. And it got weird anyway, because he kept on making me stop and re-say what I had just said in a different way, because he was trying to coach me with how I was pronouncing things. So it got weird because I was just trying to ask him a question, and he's like, wait, say it slower. And then hold your breath before you, and all this stuff. So it's kind of weird anyway. But then his housekeeper's running the vacuum in the background. His dog attacks him in the middle of it. There's somebody weed whacking in the background. I'm like, this is the audio guy that's doing this? Come on. So we all do it. Maybe he just didn't realize what was going on, or maybe he just didn't care. But it's just adventures in podcasting. That's the way I look at it.
Adventures. And you know what's funny, Adam? I feel like, and this goes for content in general, when we think it's going to be the best thing, we're like, this is the video that's going to go viral, or this is the podcast that's going to blow me up. That's the one that doesn't do anything. And then it's the one that you were like, hey, I have my microphone, you have yours, let's just do a show. And you end up doing something so random or sporadic. And that's the thing that catches on. So it's crazy how you just never know, which is why you just focus on the reps, right? After I did that one, I thought, okay, this sucks. And I was really upset because I thought it was such a great episode. And I'm like, all right, it's just another rep. It's one more rep. And now it's the next one and on to the next one. And you just keep going. And so at least it kind of helps you get into that mindset of, it was just one more. It was just one more. And you just never know. And that's what's so exciting to think about too, when it comes to podcasting, is you just keep doing it and you don't know who's going to find it, who's going to listen, and who's going to share it. And it could take one person that has a massive audience that shares it or that talks about it or that, starts to build that momentum. And that's what I find so exciting. And that's why I think it's so, as podcasters, we have to be so aware of focusing so much on, yes, the technical and the audio and all of that stuff is very important. But I think we can over complicate or just put so much emphasis on that we forget about who are you serving? Yep. What are you saying to them? And what do they need from you? So listening to them and giving them that feedback is really what's most important.
Yeah. And keeping your ideal audience avatar top of mind. So when you're speaking into the microphone, like when I talk here, I'm talking to Kate, but I'm also thinking about my avatar. I'm like, where does this conversation need to go to serve them specifically? Like that's always top of mind, because without an audience, that's the whole thing for me is impact. Like I really want to impact. So we've got to keep that top of mind. Okay. I can't let you escape as a veteran of the podcasting game. We got to talk about some podcasting launch tips, because you talked about procrastination. I've got a special name for my podcasters out there that are podcrastinating, that have not launched their show yet. So there's a lot of people that listen in. They're like, I'm thinking about it. We always talk about launch tips. So let's speak to that avatar for a few minutes here, Kate. Like there's those people out there that they've got this great idea. They're like, I know I've got this thing that I know who I want to talk to. I know who I want to serve, but I'm podcrastinating. I'm just afraid to launch for whatever reason. What if you could look them in the eye and grab them and just give them a little pep talk? What would that sound like?
First of all, podcastinating. That is awesome. I love that. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit as far as starting. I think when it comes to launching the podcast, the advice that I would share is what I feel you've probably already talked about many times on your show, because it's when you launch, don't have one show, right? Like have a few shows so that when you launch it, people actually can listen to a few and kind of get excited to learn a little bit more about what the show is going to be about and know your topics. But honestly, I feel like get the show out, like focus on creating 3 or 5, when we launched, we had 5. So, 5 or 6 episodes, focus on creating really great episodes, getting it up on whatever platform, right? Like that was another thing. Like I kind of went back and forth. Oh, should I be on Anchor? But then everyone says Anchor is horrible because it's like for newbie podcasters. I need to be out. Like everyone was talking about all the different platforms. So then I was like, I got really stressed out. I was like, I don't know which one to do. And then I'm like, oh my God, just pick one, go with it. You can always change it. Like, don't overcomplicate. The second that I start to overcomplicate is when I know I need to just go back to that. What's the simple thing, right? Like, I mean, yes, there's goods and bads and pros and cons to all of these things. But really, when it comes to technology, most things are very similar, right? Like, I mean, there are differences and I'm sure you have your preference, but they're so similar. You can't go wrong. Like you can only go wrong if you don't do it, if you don't put it out. So choose your tech, get your shows, put out your show, and have those expectations of knowing, look, you're not going to launch your podcast and become Joe Rogan. You're not going to launch your podcast and have 1 million followers. Like you're going to launch your podcast and it's a big deal to you. So you share with your friends and you put it on social and you get it out and you start talking about it and you get excited about it. But have the expectation of, this is my podcast and I'm sharing it with the world. I think so often we think, oh, if I launch it right, if I do exactly these steps, then it's going to gain all this, like it's going to get #1 on Apple. I mean, again, I think that's so much of our ego talking, right? Yeah. Like it really is around your show and you really just want to put the show out and see what happens with it. Then yes, have a strategy. I'm not saying to not have a strategy, but like make it a simple strategy, right? Like put together a 1-page document that says, this is when I'm launching. These are the first 5 episodes. This is when it's going out. I'm going to create this artwork to have on for the show. And I'm going to put out these, whether you decide to do audiograms or whatever, just like put little buckets of how I'm going to market it, who I'm going to share it with, who are some of the collaborators, and just put it out. Like, stop putting it out. There's no, ooh, if the moon is rising and the sun is setting and at 5 p.m., like then if it comes out at that exact moment, this will happen. Like, that's just not how it works. So you have to just push it out, get it out, do it. One of our last episodes from 2 weeks ago is called Ship It. Ship it, get it out.
Yes.
Get it out.
Yes. Well, I heard a rumor that before you launch your show, if you stand in your bathroom in the dark, look in the mirror and say algorithm 17 times in a row, you're going to get top Apple charts. But
first you have to jump up and down and do it like do 3 burpees. Like, no, there's like,
you have to make a sacrifice to Mark Zuckerberg, all these things are science. It's proven.
Yes,
true fact. Yeah, it's really hard to screw it up. Like, just getting it out there. Of course, like, you want a podcast image, you want some episodes, do the best you can with the audio. Other than that, it's all like an extra 5 to 10% optimization. It's not do or die. Everybody's like, new and noteworthy. Guess what? New and noteworthy isn't even a thing anymore. Like, that's not even a thing. Like, you can't even get on it. It's pay to play, like and it's just, that's the way it is. So I love what you said there. Just like, out there is better than not out there. Let's keep it simple. Like, no one will hear your message if they never hear your message. So just getting it out, start ugly, like my friend Chris Cominso says, and build, fine tune. If you're working out, you have to squat 100 pounds before you squat 200 pounds. So this is you learning. If you get a few injuries along the way, you learn what not to do. Okay. I screwed up the audio in an interview. Now I know what not to do. I've got that playbook and I can implement that moving forward, and you get better and better and better. Put your year of reps in, you're going to walk out a much better person, regardless if you continue on with your podcasting journey. So Kate, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I knew it was going to be a good one. I really appreciate the way that you show up in the world and the way you're serving with your show and inspiring people to get their message out there, to create, just get what you have to say out there and worry about perfecting it later. I love that message. I love it all. Where do people go if they want to like dig into your show? They want to message you and tell you thank you, or they want to interact on social media. How do they hang out with you, Kate?
Well, of course, you can check out Create for No Reason, our podcast, everywhere you get your podcasts. And Instagram is the easiest way to message me. I post a lot. I post all the episodes onto Instagram. I'm more active there. Actually, because of Clubhouse, I'm way more active on Instagram these days since that was the platform. So if you want to connect with me, would love to hear from you, what you liked about the show. If you need someone to just kind of kick your butt into starting, I'm happy to just yell at you to start.
Boom. She'll get you fired up. All right. So
procrastination to implementation. That's what I'm about now, Adam.
Procrastination to implementation with your friend, Kate. That might be a new rebrand. That might be the new name of the show now. I don't know. Like, we just rebranded her show unknowingly. All right, Pod Pals. We've given you a lot to think about. If you are somebody that already has a show, maybe you've been beating yourself up a little bit about not being as perfect as you thought, or the numbers aren't what they thought they would be. Hopefully we gave you a little food for thought, something to think about and consider of like, all right, I'm putting in reps. I'm getting better. I've built up some scar tissue, but now I can take those lessons learned and move forward in a better way. Maybe you've been procrastinating. You've got that idea and you've been like, oh, I can't find the right image and the name is iffy. Like, we just got to get it out there. Let's flick that first domino over, get your message out there. And as always, I'm going to send you off wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We will see you on the next episode.